definitely getting better at this, man. All right, we're back for another episode of the Fundamentals Podcast.
That's
Uh,
right. Got the
yeah,
Broncos
I
shirt on
I
today, buddy.
see it. I see it. I see it. It. Hey, realistically, y'all are. I mean, y'all could win the division.
Yeah, we're just one game behind the Chiefs right now.
Right. Yeah. Realistically, y'all could win it. I mean, look, obviously Denver has figured it out. Everybody's on board. I'm Kansas City, man. Like at this point, the crying about the offsides thing and all of that, man.
Yeah.
They're just not, Patrick Mahomes is not used to this. he's he's in a territory that he's not familiar with, the struggling.
Oh, yeah. One thing that I never thought of, but they were talking about during that game against the Bills, was that
Uh-huh.
he has never played a playoff game on the road. And the way they're
Really?
going, I mean, it's bound to happen because,
Right.
you've already got the Ravens who have a better record than them, and the Dolphins have a better record. So it's going
Yeah.
to happen. And
Right.
he, they're, they just, they can't seem to stop shooting themselves in the foot,
Agreed.
So, yeah. Yeah, that was
Uh
an insane game. His whole tirade at the end. I mean, I think everybody in America except for Chiefs fans were like, "Dude, your guy was offside, man. How could they not call that?"
right. Yeah, it was like severely offsides.
It was
And
so.
the thing is, like, I don't know if football players on their bye week watch other games, right? I don't know who's watching what. I'm sure there are some players that are like, besides me playing, I don't watch football. Like I've seen interviews where players were like, oh, I don't really watch football, right?
Right.
But I saw the press conference and he goes, I've been playing for 6 or 7, whatever years, this many games, and that's never been called, never been called. And
Mm.
they did say that that was something that would be called more this year, and it has been, right?
Yeah.
That was, I mean, he was severely offline. Like there's not that it's
Yeah.
not a question mark there. He was severely
Yeah.
offline. And on top of that, nobody knew that they were going to score on that. So we can't say
Yeah.
that, oh, they waited till we scored or anything like that. Like they didn't know when they threw that flag. And obviously, it works the same way with offsides on the defense.
Yeah.
They don't blow the play dead.
No.
They let them play it out, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and with that
and
play, as soon as the ball was snapped, you saw the flag fly up in the air. So
there,
it wasn't like
exactly.
they decided to throw the penalty after that amazing play that Kelsey made. It was
Right.
already a penalty. So yeah,
Right.
yeah, nobody's
I
out to
feel
get you, Bust.
I feel like he threw a temper tantrum early on. I did like Patrick Mahomes, like I was like, man, this guy is I like the passes he makes and you know, I mean, yeah, he is a playmaker, right? But like I feel like that interview and his antics on the sideline, to me, I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, now we're dealing with a brat. I don't like brats. Like
I don't either.
I don't like brats. You know what I mean? Like clearly it was offsides, and I think I saw, I think I saw more of what I wanted to see, or more of what I didn't want to see from him. Like, because I had already started to be like, okay, like he kind of whines a lot. Like he always feels like stuff is not going his way. It's a lot of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, like, hey, you take your L's, like I could going back to the Rams Ravens game. The
Sure.
defense could complain about the amount of holding that was done to Aaron Donalds. And I like looked at 11 plays where they could have called holding. blocking
Sure.
Aaron Donald, right? But that wasn't the deciding factor of the game. The deciding factor of the game was there were some plays in the secondary that were blown, and
Yeah.
the secondary got beat. And period, right? Like it is what it is, like, and I just felt like he was being a spoiled little brat, and I just
Yeah.
didn't. I wasn't impressed, man. It just made me dislike him, and I don't know. I know, you being a Denver Bronco fan, you're like, screw Kansas City, screw the Raiders, screw the
Yeah.
Chargers, like for you, but I don't know. I just saw something different, like in him, and it just made me. I hate to say this because like I'm a fan of football, but it just made me want to see them lose even more now. Like I feel like they
Yeah.
were riding a high horse. They felt like they're so superior, and like those antics after the game on what was clearly a offsides on the
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah.
It really turned me it really turned me off. Like I was like, not that I was some huge I'm not a Kansas City fan at all, but
Right.
I kind of had liked the guy, and now I'm just kind of like, that was a little bit disturbing to me. I felt like I saw a big baby on the sideline.
Yeah. That whole press conference afterwards, and having watched too many games, with Patrick Mahomes, especially on the losing side as a Denver Broncos fan, um, that's not how he is. He doesn't act like that. He's not the cookie cutter quarterback that just says all the right things and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was very out of character for him. So I don't like him because he's a Chief, but at the same time, I respect the hell out of him because we've only beat him once in the history of his time as the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback. But yeah, that was very uncharacteristic. And I think, and somebody said something. It might have been Shannon Sharp, who said, with everything that happened to um, during that game, when it comes to um, the Mahomes press conference and all their frustration, um, I kind of think that maybe they're frustrated with their receivers and they're just
Mm.
too good at teammates, and maybe they're too good at teammates to yell at Tony and some of the other receivers that are making these bonehead plays and dropping all these balls and stuff, that maybe the true frustration was towards him, but they're too good a teammates or too good a coach to yell at them, so the referees just happen to be the easiest scapegoat. But out of everything that happened,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
that makes
they're
sense.
not holding Tony responsible for all the mistakes he's been making, and that's who the Chiefs really need to go after.
Yeah, yeah, I agree that I mean that makes sense. And you know, obviously when Tyreek Hill left, and they still win a Super Bowl, it's like, okay, well, we didn't need Tyreek, but maybe we're seeing some effects of that because
Hmm.
the let's I mean the drop passes have been
Yeah,
insane. Like and these are drops, like open drops.
yeah,
And I I think you may be right in terms of that makes sense that that frustration. It's like, who do I channel that energy to? Who can I?
yeah,
Because I don't want to make the locker room harder than it already is. Like the
yeah,
media has talked about the wide receivers and the drop passes. So it's like,
yeah,
who do I channel this energy to? Because I want to try to bring things up and get on the upside of things, but at the same time, these things continue. The media continues to talk about it, and it is frustrating. I imagine that as a quarterback, it can be frustrating. It's like anywhere in a workplace where
yeah,
you're doing what you have to do and things still aren't working because others aren't doing what they should be doing, right? Like as a
Mm-hmm.
professional wide receiver, the level of drops that are happening, it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
And I could get where the frustration comes through, and that's a fair assessment.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, as a professional, I guess, yeah, is he entitled to a meltdown? I mean, yeah, he can be entitled to that, but at the there's that I don't know. I feel like I don't know. We've seen Tom Brady have these things where he gets frustrated. We've seen, all the great quarterbacks have that kind
Yeah.
of frustration on the sidelines. It's happened. Um, I think for me, it was more the press conference because,
Yeah.
being frustrated right after the game, but it was after when you have the press conference, you've had some time to decompress and think, and
Yeah.
it was still, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm at with it. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts? I mean, what?
Well, and this year, and we've talked about it. This year, it's not. If you're gonna say negative stuff about the referees, you're not wrong because
Right?
officiating
Yeah,
has been suspect all year, even going back to last year.
very
And
true.
the officiating, I think, has gone downhill. And all of these areas of emphasis that they talk about um, have really, you can tell it's frustrating the players, it's frustrating the coaches, both on the sidelines and in the press conferences. So, I mean, it's easy and it's fair to go after the officials, but not on that play, you know.
Yeah,
And I was a little confused at first because when I saw him just losing his mind on the sidelines after that incomplete fourth down pass, for a minute I thought he was yelling at Tony. You know,
oh
I didn't
yeah,
know who he was yelling at, but then
right,
you saw the handshake or the exchange that he had with Josh Allen after the game, and then also the press conference, which confirmed what I think Nance was talking about. The announcer was he was really pissed off at the referee or the linesman who called the offside, and then when
right.
he started talking about everything else. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's the NFL really needs to figure out how they're gonna fix this because the officiating it's bad. It's not as
It is.
good as it has been in the past. I don't know if the talent has retired and they're not bringing up any good referees, or it's just too much for them to handle. I mean, I know the NFL referees have always been like a part-time job. You don't have full-time officials,
Right,
which might be the solution right
right,
there. Bring in folks who their only purpose in life is referees. Because some of these guys are doctors and lawyers and everything else,
right.
and they just travel to games on the weekends. So yeah, there's plenty of blame that the officiating can take for just bad calls all year. Like you were talking about all the holding calls that weren't called against uh,
The Rams,
the Rams and
Aaron. Yeah,
but it would seem like the only time the officials got it right was against the Chiefs and on that offside because the official
right,
even said after the game, he's like, I couldn't even see the ball your guy was blocking, was so far
right,
over the line of scrimmage. It was so plain.
right.
So, I mean, all you can do, and I think, and Mahomes apologized to it yesterday, and he's moving on.
Hmm.
And maybe this is just a little humility pill that he needs to take,
Right,
and get back on track. Because if he doesn't get his mind right and get that team's mind right, they're either going to exit in the first round or they're not even going to make the playoffs. Because like we said,
playoffs.
the Broncos are just a game behind, and there's 6 teams in the AFC right now that are 7-6. and the Chiefs are 8-5. So they've got an easy schedule coming, down the stretch and stuff. But if they don't get their act together and stop worrying about crazy calls that the officials make or don't make, they might not make the playoffs at all. So,
Yeah.
that's my take.
Yeah, the officiating has been bad over the last 2 years, and a lot of this is over what the league says that they want to emphasize this year. And I think it does put
Yeah.
pressure on the referees, but at the same time, maybe we should have full-time referees. Also,
Yeah.
should we be is there something where the NFL can hold the referees accountable, because it seems like there's no accountability. I mean, the only thing that happens is, yeah, you can't referee the bigger games, right? You have the more accurate officials into the playoffs, into the NFC Championship game or AFC Championship game, into the Super Bowl, right? And I'm sure that there's more money involved in those games, but let's say there is an official that doesn't quite care about that, right? How does how is he held accountable? We've seen some really egregious calls, right? Like blatant, like wow calls, and nothing happens. Is it something where they're worried about, if we hold this referee accountable? Let's say they say, "Well, you get 50% of your game check based on, or you're fined based on, you know, some of the egregious calls that you missed, right? Because as a referee, you should have spotted that."
Right.
I think part of that is they may be worried about that referee just says, "Okay, well then I just won't referee," right? Because like you said, a lot of them are attorneys and doctors. They're successful, right? So an extra, maybe to some of them, an extra $150,000 to $200,000 a year is not that big of a deal to them. Something has to happen, right? That obviously we see that, right? The inconsistencies with the ref and the QB, we see some of them called, some of them not called in other games. The inconsistency with what's a hold, what's an illegal hit, just a lot of things. How physical can the corner be with the wide receiver? Because I've seen some calls where I'm like, I mean, what are we looking at? We're looking at some hand slapping running up the field. Like they're literally just slapping hands. Nobody's holding anything, and you call a pass interference. And I also see a lot of reactionary flags where the wide receiver gets up, holds his hands up, then the referee throws the flag out there. Like I see a lot of those, and it's like, hold on, you're responding to somebody just wanting a call. If I'm a wide receiver and I go out and there's a pass on my way, should get a flag on the play. Yes, obviously something has to happen in terms of officiating in the NFL, and that's something I think Roger Goodell really needs to address and be vocal about this offseason.
That's it. We haven't heard a peep from Roger Goodell, and if you watch any of the sports networks, everybody's talking about the officiating, even the NFL network. But we're not hearing anything from Roger Goodell. And like you said, I know these referees are graded somehow. And if they don't make grades, or if they make high enough grades, they get to, officiate in the playoffs and beyond, Super Bowl and stuff. But if they don't make grades, do we just replace them with folks that are trying to make their way up, the ladder and stuff? If they can't cut it, I'm sure there's a line of folks in college and high school that are officiating and are better, that can get their shot. So I think the first thing that needs to happen is they need to hold the referees accountable. I'd like the idea of fining them, or not fining them as much as just withholding, I guess it's the same thing, fining them.
Same thing.
But Goodell needs to speak up.
I think, and I think that's the biggest thing, is like nobody's heard anything from him in terms of officiating. He hasn't said a word about it. And I get I get where people believe that because again, these are
Mm-hmm.
regular people with regular jobs. Like I
Yeah.
get how one could believe that, hey, there's gambling involved, right? I get
Yeah.
how, and I don't want to say that. Like I don't want to blame gambling, but as a fan, like
Yeah.
it's hard to like some of the things that I've seen, it's like it's hard to believe that,
Yeah.
like come on now. Like even with and the thing is, New York, the head office, the officiating office, New York can see these things, right?
Yeah.
Can't they
Yeah.
call and say, hey, that's wrong? Like real quick, it's fast. They check scores fast enough. They replay every
Mm-hmm.
touchdown. You mean to tell
Yeah.
me that New York can't call? Like I know you saw that play when Pittsburgh Steelers played the Los Angeles Rams, and Pittsburgh clearly did not have a first down. Like clearly, like it
Yeah.
was on
Yeah.
everybody saw that. He was clearly a yard short. Like, I mean, there was no question about that.
And they didn't
Obviously,
even measure. Yeah.
didn't even measure it. And McVay it was inside 2 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Yeah. Yeah.
New,
So you
New,
can challenge it. Yeah.
Yeah, so he couldn't challenge it. New York is supposed to challenge everything within 2 minutes in the 2 minute warning,
Mm-hmm.
and they never did. So
Right.
things like that make people question: is there gambling involved from somebody, right? Because people want to keep point spreads and things like that.
Yeah.
Like
Right. Oh yeah. Definitely the spread.
so those things raise red flags, and I think what happens is by Goodell not saying anything,
Right.
I think people that are fans are like, all right, you know what? I'm done. I can't deal with
Mm-hmm.
this because
Yeah.
I don't know if this is legitimate, right? And I'm not some
Absolutely.
huge conspiracy theorist, but it's fair to assume
Yeah.
that there's something going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it keeps happening, and
Yeah,
it's not being addressed, just like you said.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you
Or
know,
at least
I don't
not publicly. If they are, then tell us. You know.
yeah, yeah. Because especially as the fans, because
Yeah.
as the your money is generated from the fan. Don't you want to keep the people that are keeping
Mm-hmm.
this thing, this well-oiled machine, $1 billion industry? Don't you want to keep them informed?
Yeah.
Without them, these players aren't getting these hundred millions of dollars. You're
Mm-hmm.
not making ticket sales. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a $1 billion industry, and that's due to the fans. It's something. I mean, college officiating is better. I don't know
Well, I
why.
agree.
I don't know why. I have no explanation for that, but
Yeah.
clearly, you know what I mean. Clearly, there's something. There's something wrong. It needs to be fixed. Plain
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
simple.
You don't see officiating questioned nearly as much in college football,
College
and they're
football.
playing 10 times as many games. You know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And also one could argue that college football is bigger than the NFL in a sense, because there is some people that just because they went to that college, they watch the game and they don't watch any other football, but they watch their
Yeah.
team, the alumni and all these boosters and things like
Hmm.
that. And that they're invested financially and
Hmm.
emotionally and at a different kind of level, because it's like I went to that college, right? I don't watch any other football, but I'll watch Ole Miss or that
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So
And
one could
there's
argue,
so many fans that just like college football because of all of the nonsense that comes with being an NFL fan or watching NFL football.
right? Yeah, I mean, obviously, we know the snub to Florida State, so that's a black
Yeah.
eye for college football. But I mean, we could, I think I think that's addressed in the off season. I've
Yeah.
said my piece. You saw me ranting on Twitter. I've said
Yeah.
my piece about that. I don't even want to really open it. Like I said, Florida State deserve to be in. And the one thing I have several arguments, but this is the one thing I'll tell you. This is what I'll say. You can't tell me that right now. First I'll ask you this: that Alabama Georgia game, because could that game have gone anyway?
It could have gone either way.
Either
Yeah.
team, it could have gone either way. Both those teams, right?
Yeah, so, it was whoever had the ball last was going to win that game.
Because we're going to win that game, right?
Yeah.
So the committee says right now we believe Alabama is better than Florida State. Okay, so why is Florida State ranked higher than Georgia then?
Exactly. How did Georgia, who had won 29 games in a row, 2 national championships, lose a tight game to Alabama, and all of a sudden they're the 6th ranked team in the nation?
Right.
And you know what that some people don't talk about? Georgia and Florida State probably have a better – Florida State definitely have a better argument for making the playoffs than Washington does.
Oh, yeah.
Why did Washington go undefeated? Because you have Oregon also. I mean, they beat Oregon twice. You know, there's no other good teams, even Colorado, and I'm a Colorado fan, in the Pac-12. This is a division that's not even going to exist next year. And you're going to tell me that they're no question, they're the number 3 team in college football. Why wasn't Florida State put ahead of Washington?
Right.
You know, I know if you want to say it's the most deserving team or it's the team that's got the, you know, that's the best team right now, why isn't Georgia higher than Washington, but Alabama's higher than Florida State? I mean, if anything, you should have had both Georgia and Alabama, but then that would have confirmed a lot of the SEC bias that exists when it comes to the rankings and stuff, you know? And a lot of it founded because the SEC has dominated college football for the last 15 years. But yeah, there's a lot, and hopefully it's addressed because they're going to have more teams in the playoffs. They're eligible for the playoffs next year. But yeah, but you even said it yourself. This is all of a sudden making the BCS look good. And you didn't want that because the BCS was terrible. But all of a sudden the BCS seems like the better option after 10 years of college playoffs. It used to be you had to pick the best 2 teams, and they would play for the national championship. And you're like, oh, that's so subjective. Who's the top 2 teams? And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, now it's the 4 teams. We can't mess this up. You kind of did, you know?
You kind of did.
So when you go to the top 6 teams next year or whatever it is, are we still going to go through this? Or does there just need to be a total realignment and conference schedules and stop relying on a room full of, you know, oligarchs who decide who's first and who's second and who's third, you know? How about you have, you know, like 4 super divisions or something like that, and they have divisions. I mean, there's got to be some way where you can just say you won your division, you won your conference, you're going to play in the playoffs. You're a wild card team. You're a first round bye, you know, just kind of like what they do in the NFL or what they do in basketball or even the college basketball tournament, you know?
Yeah. I thought about that. And one of the things that confused me too is all of a sudden the schedule matters because they were like, oh, well, Florida State schedule wasn't that good. What did they talk about all year? All they talked about all year was how Michigan wasn't playing anybody.
Yeah.
Right. That's all they talked about all year. Right. How Michigan wasn't playing.
And Michigan's, I don't care. Michigan's going to get thumped by Alabama. And if they played Georgia, they would get thumped by Georgia. I bet you Michigan's pissed off right now that they didn't get to play Florida State in the first, you know, round of the playoffs.
I think they would have rather had played Florida State.
They would have rather played Florida State because they're going to get their butt whipped by Alabama.
And Florida State has a really good defense. Florida State has a good defense. I think I don't think enough people really paid attention to it. And it's like, okay, well they don't have, they were playing with their
Mhm.
third string quarterback, but it's
Yeah.
like, hey, he didn't even know he was playing until game time. It was a game time decision.
Yeah.
It was a game time decision. He had never played collegiate football, like that
Yeah.
he,
Yeah.
up from the practice squad, so like
Yeah.
all those to me the arguments just didn't fit the bill for me. Like the
Oh yeah.
arguments just they didn't work. None of the arguments made any sense.
And you're going to tell me that Michigan beating Iowa in their championship game automatically qualifies them to be the top ranked team in their division?
Right.
And Ohio State, who almost lost to Notre Dame, who has I mean they're a decent team, but they
Right.
almost lost to North Carolina, and it could and that's an ACC team.
Right.
There are so many things wrong, I think, with Michigan's claim as the top team and with Texas as the Big 12 champion, because I don't
Mhm.
think much of the Big 12 right now. The Sooners aren't what they used to be.
Be
They
yeah.
lost to Oklahoma State. They also lost to Kansas. So the
Yeah.
Big 12 ain't nothing. The Pac-12 is just a bunch of it's a offensive powerhouse,
With
but
no
when they go
defense.
up against those fast defensive teams, and I
Hmm.
think like you're right, Florida State's one of them. I
Right.
think they would have gotten destroyed by Florida State, and I
Yeah.
think whoever plays Alabama is going to get destroyed because they're good in defense and the athletes are better.
Yeah. That's just the reality of it,
Hmm.
and the thing is, I mean, it's clear as day. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that they wanted an SEC team, preferably Alabama. Like this is
Oh yeah, they
I
love
yeah,
Alabama.
but like Shannon Sharp, like 5 years ago said this is the Alabama Invitational. That's what it is. The NCAA playoffs are the Alabama Invitationals. Spec. You know, um, you don't have a lot of options where
Oh,
I'm at. In
oh,
terms,
I live 5 miles out of the city. I know exactly what you
yeah.
mean. Which is
So,
I'm
but
surprised my internet's this good.
yeah, yeah. You learn to deal with it and work with it. They actually have something new here as a fiber company where they're doing some new fiber optics. It's a new company, and they've been putting some here in this area. They've been putting some new fiber optics, and it's
All
supposed to
right,
be a lot better. I've heard some positive things about it. It's just
good.
not in the area where I'm at yet,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
when it gets here, yeah, right. So,
Cool.
but yeah, man, that other big news. I'm excited to talk about this because we had talked about Otani and where he
Yeah,
was gonna go. The Dodgers. The
he doesn't even have
Dodgers.
to move. Yeah, he
He
goes
does
to the
not have to
Dodgers.
move. He's less than an hour away from where he was
Right.
at. It's like he keeps his house. I mean, the contract. Here's the thing. I've said this for years. I think I had this conversation with you before when we were talking about Kyler Murray and with the Oakland A's offering
Yeah.
him, some money. Um, as a like as a parent, right? And my child wants to play sports, right? If
Yeah.
if my child wants to play sports, and even like if I knew back then what I know now, like pick up a baseball glove and a bat, man. Like don't put a basketball in their hand,
Oh,
don't put a football in their hand. Give them a baseball and a bat and a glove, man, and
yeah.
have go to the diamond, man, because
Oh, and if
that
he
money.
if you have a son that throws left-handed,
Oh
then
yeah,
you better teach him how to throw a slider because he
oh
will
yeah,
make millions in the major leagues. Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah. that contract, and it's such a weird structure, that contract. There's a
It
lot of
is.
deferred, but it still hits their luxury tax, as far as
Right.
the amount goes, because they're actually only paying him like $2 million per year for the next
Per
10
year.
years.
Yeah.
But as it's structured over 10 years, it's like a $46.5 million per year contract, as far as their luxury tax goes.
Taxes go.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there's so much incentives and endorsements and all of. I mean, and he makes more money than anybody in baseball when it comes to
And all of that
commercials
stuff.
and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So he's already doing okay.
Even in
Um,
Japan, not just here, but in
oh
Japan as
yeah,
well.
he,
Yeah.
he owns. I mean, he owns the market in Japan and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's gonna be all right, and
Oh yeah.
he's gonna start winning. He's gonna start going to the playoffs and winning. And
Right.
and
Yeah.
I heard an interesting comment, and I think it was his agent that said it. Because if you look at his offensive stats when it comes to this salary, he's he's on the same level as like Aaron Judge when it comes to offense.
Right.
He's hitting, he led the majors this year in home runs.
Yeah.
Um, he's won 2 MVPs already. He was fourth place in the Cy Young Award contest last year. He's won 67% of the games that he's played in or that he's pitched in. So just from an offensive standpoint, he's as good as Judge. And then you can throw in the extra $100 million or whatever that he's making because of how good of a pitcher he is. I mean,
Right.
I don't have a problem. I'm just upset that the Rockies didn't get him,
Right.
but I don't have a problem with this at all. I mean, the amount of money that baseball is generating as the third most popular professional sport is just crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's encouraging. Like you said, if I had a son and he wants to play sports, I'd be pushing him towards
Yeah.
baseball because
Right.
the salaries are guaranteed. He's gonna get that money. The union is better in baseball. It's like I said, the salaries are guaranteed. It's not as much of a pounding. I know, you're playing 162 games a year and you're doing a lot of traveling and stuff like that. But it's not like it was in the 1970s where you're traveling by bus or, you know, coach on an airplane or something like that. You got the best trainers. You've got the best travel arrangements made and all that other stuff. They really, really spend a lot of money on this stuff now, and that's because of all of the great work that the unions have done. So yeah, cool. It's just it's going to be interesting to see what kind of an impact he makes in the National League now,
Right.
and you wonder why the Dodgers can be so successful. But and mainly because they're in such a big market and can spend the money. But why can't the Angels right down the street do the same thing? Or why are the Yankees so successful, but the Mets only show up, once every
Right.
20 years and actually, scare somebody? It's insane.
It is. It's very interesting too because Anaheim, like,
Right.
I guess I guess Anaheim from because it's not that it's an hour away, so
Yeah.
it seems like it should generate the same kind of especially
Hmm.
in Anaheim. If you know the area a little bit, it seems like Anaheim is more expensive, than LA to a point because of what's surrounding Anaheim,
Hmm.
and you know, I don't know. I can't even explain it because like you even brought up New York Yankees and New York Mets. Like, what's the difference? Like why
Hmm.
why is one able to generate this kind of thing? And I mean, honestly, the only thing you could really think of is the ownership and the history of the team specifically.
Right.
We obviously we
Sure.
know the Dodgers weren't always in LA, but you know, the Yankees historically, you know, you look at that, then you look at the Dodgers historically, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at that, those names, you know, bring some kind
Sure.
of, you know, something to them, right? So I think that could be part of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, when you think about it, like you said, this contract is the way it's structured. Like Otani's gonna get from the year 2034, he'll start
Yeah.
getting $68 million a year after
Isn't it
he's
crazy?
done, you know,
After he's
after
done,
he's
he's like the Bobby
right.
Bonilla contract. Yeah.
Right, yeah, just like that. And like Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. is still getting paid from the Reds, you know?
Exactly.
You know, and that is something because I feel like Otani's like, okay, this is that's generational wealth. You know, Otani's what, 29 now? You know,
Yeah, he's not even
he'll
30. Yeah.
yeah, he's not even 30 yet. So when he starts making that $68 million a year, he'll be 40 years old, right? He'll be 40 years old. From 40 to the age of 50, from 40 to
Yeah.
50, he'll make $68 million a year. And
Yeah.
not to
He's gonna make a lot of money from endorsements between now and then as well. He'll probably make $700 million between now and when he starts to make the $700 million contract that
yeah,
he signed with the Dodgers. Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's pretty
It's pretty
it's pretty
yeah.
impressive. Yeah, but he is now what the highest paid player of all time, um, with or without all of the other CBA rules and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a head scratcher, and of course, yeah, we all knew it was going to be the Dodgers or the Red Sox or the Yankees. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I heard Toronto thrown out there a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know like how that would
yeah.
work, but I heard Toronto. I don't
Oh
know if
yeah,
they,
yeah.
you know, but
It's hard because they're in Canada, yeah. But or even
right.
the Astros. I heard the Astros and the Rangers made a run, and that would have made sense because they don't have state taxes, and that's huge when you
Yeah,
think
that's
about a
really
$700 million contract.
yeah. Well, that's why you get, you know, like when you look at, you know, teams in Texas, you know, like the Cowboys and, you know, I mean, I feel like the Cowboys
Shoot, we should be getting back soon.
back again.
Yeah,
Yeah. But no, I feel like that's, you know, how the Cowboys are able to retain a lot of players and sign some big names, like because of the tax thing, you know, like they're like,
yeah,
not only am I playing for quote America's team, but I'm also in Texas where the state taxes are not an issue.
right.
Um, yeah, no, so that's a big deal. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, I'm happy for Otani. My uncle Dave is heartbroken because he's an Angels fan. He's
Really,
a, yeah,
I don't even know if I've ever met an Angels fan before.
he's a
That's
I mean,
crazy. Wow.
he is an Angels fan. He's proud,
Wow.
you know, he's not, and it's not like, you know, I think it's just because like he lived so close over the years, you know, like
Hmm.
you know, and I know he's gone to, you know, the games and stuff. And I think just over the years, just being where he's
Yeah.
at in California over this long period, I think he just became a fan over the
Yeah,
years, and he's
that's
just
cool.
a fan. He enjoys sitting and watching them. Like if the Angels are playing, he's watching. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So and I think he definitely is the only Anaheim Angels fan that I know. Yeah, but no, I do now. We know that the Dodgers have made runs at big players, right? And it just
Right.
never seems to turn into a World Series, right?
Yeah.
Does that change? Well, we know Otani's not going to be pitching right off the bat. He just had Tommy John surgery
Right.
this year.
Hmm.
But in the long run,
Right.
do you believe that generates a World Series? And how long is too long before before it's like, what's going on? Why aren't they? Because if they don't win it three,
Mm.
like, I think
Yeah.
it's the Dodgers. They're going to be competitive. But is this the all right? Now we're going to win the World Series, or
Yeah.
is
Well,
there if they don't in the next 4 or 5 years, is it a failure?
I don't think having a great hitter wins you championships. Look, I mean, they've had Mike Trout and Otani for the last 5 years, and they've never made
Right,
the playoffs. You
right,
know, so
yeah,
I mean, I think it's more than just having a great hitter, and it's more than having a great offensive presence. If you look at just the teams that have won recently, the Astros had the good pitching,
hmm
and they had the clutch bullpen, and they had players that showed up in the playoffs, you know,
yeah.
and they were just good enough to make it, to the playoffs. But I don't know if just having one, adding a bat, even, a great bat like Otani is going to be the thing that puts them closer, but it certainly isn't going to hurt him. And to be honest, I mean, when it comes to baseball, and especially these teams that are just printing money like the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Yankees, just having that extra um, player on your roster is going to generate more revenue from all of the other stuff. And I mean, they
True.
talk about. I heard that the the beer at Dodger Stadium is more expensive. The the parking is more expensive. The fact that you have to travel to Dodger Stadium and park there. It's not like they live right next to a subway system like they do in New York.
New
If
York,
you've
yeah.
ever been to a Dodger game, I mean that place is on an island. I mean it's
Yeah.
not easy to get to. You have to drive to it unless you live in the neighborhood.
Right.
So yeah, there's so many benefits from having a big name like Otani, like Freddie Freeman, like all the Betts, everybody else that they've got on their team. But
Yeah.
you got to be like, I mean, the Rangers got hot, and the Astros got hot at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are going to win a World Series. The Phillies got hot, and then they got cold all of a sudden. And that's why they
Yeah.
didn't win a World Series. That's
Yeah.
why they didn't even make it to the World Series. So yeah, it's baseball so weird when it comes to that. But it's not going to hurt them. I can say you that. And they were already contender, and now they just got one more weapon in their arsenal. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. The thing that I'm kind of excited to see, because we talked about like baseball not being like, we don't see it a lot, we don't talk about it a lot, and I know
hmm
Otani like kept quiet. He wasn't, nobody was
yeah,
really speaking out and talking about anything, and everything was under wraps, and but when it came out, it was a big story. And I
yeah,
love baseball. Like I really do love baseball. Like it was
yeah.
like the
hmm
first sport that I like knew and
Oh,
understood.
it's It's my favorite sport out of all of them. Yeah.
Right. And so with that, like, I'm glad this is a big thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad that for a couple days the headliner was baseball, right? And
Yeah.
moves
Yeah.
in baseball. And I'm
Yeah.
excited about that. And I think that helps next year. I think that helps because people are going to be glued. They want to know what Otani is doing with the Dodgers. I think it brings the whole story is going to bring a different level of fans because it brings curiosity.
Yeah.
Because Otani
Yeah.
is such a big player, and when you talk
Yeah.
about him playing with
Have to
Anaheim,
be.
like you said, like how many Anaheim Angel fans do you know, right? And
Right.
I, I, I while you don't know a lot of Anaheim fans, we know the numbers and what Otani has been able to do. But now we get to see him do that with a winning team, like a team that's
Mm-hmm.
expected to go to the playoffs, and
Right.
a team with some history, and a team that we know, like, well, I mean, we even know the ownership group of the Dodgers, the Guggenheim,
Oh yeah.
ownership. Like, you don't generally know the ownership groups of teams, but we know
Sure.
Guggenheim and we know Magic Johnson is part of
Right.
them and all of that, so I think it will bring a different level of fans and curiosity, and that's big for baseball. So I like it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that baseball messed up when you didn't see as much of the news, and it was such a quiet, process. Because I remember when LeBron James was doing his all the stuff that he was doing before he got signed by the Miami Heat. I
Right.
mean, I mean, when he went to New York and talked to Pat Riley or whoever, and all this other stuff that happened. I can't remember, maybe, but all the different places that he went was followed, and it was such a big story, and it wasn't, there was so much buildup. With this one, it was
Right.
like nobody talked about it. You knew he was seeing teams, but then all of a sudden it's just like breaking news. He's a Dodger, and you're like, who else did he talk to? Why didn't we see all
Yeah.
that? And why didn't baseball take advantage of all of the the attention they could have gotten during the off season by announcing he's got a meeting with the Astros this week. He's got a meeting with the Rangers this week. He's got a meeting with the Yankees this week. And there could have been so much buzz because he was the biggest free agent during this off season, but they kind of blew it.
Yeah.
It's like or maybe they don't care because they're making so much money from all these other network
Things.
deals and regional broadcasting and everything else.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that could be, like, I, you know, I'm kind of on the fence with it because I'm like, I think it led up to a great explosion. It was like
Yeah.
kept under wraps. But then when it happened, it was like, oh wow, you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
I was curious. I know a lot of like baseball fans were curious, but I think baseball has kind of become like we don't hear anything that goes on hockey. It's never, but even with
Yeah.
hockey, there's nothing pressing. Like, like the St. Louis Blues have a new interim head coach. Like I don't even,
Yeah.
I didn't see that on anything. I found that out
Nothing.
when I went to Twitter and put in St. Louis Blues and found that out, right? It wasn't something that just popped up for me. And I'm a Blues
Yeah.
fan, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think not to say that, baseball is not bigger than hockey or vice versa, but I think baseball has kind of figured out that, yeah, we're the third sport here now, when we used to be the number one in America, but now we're the third.
Sure.
But I think they've figured out that but our lane is still successful, right? Even being in
Yeah.
third, I think they figured out that we can still generate a lot of money. And it's like you said, you talk about the prices, and talk about like the different markets at the games, when you buy beer and all these things, the baseball games, even some of the bad teams, people are going to go to the games. People want to be at a
Yeah.
ballpark. They want a ballpark hot dog. They want to. I mean, even I went to go watch the Round Rock Express, and all I
Yeah.
wanted was a hot dog. Like I'm like, let me
Yeah.
get 2 hot dogs, and I go put all my ketchup and
Yep.
my mustard.
Yeah.
I don't even like ketchup on hot dogs. But at the baseball game, when I went to see the Round Rock Express, I
Yeah.
put ketchup and mustard and relish and onions on my hot dog. Like I made an American ballpark hot dog. And so that's
Yeah.
one of the things, we talk about it's still having some worth. And part of it
Yeah.
is because I'll tell anybody, like, go to a baseball game. Like it's really exciting. Like I know when people say, "Oh, I watch it on TV and it's boring," and I'm like, um, it can be, depending on who
Yeah.
you're watching. I
Sure.
enjoy it. It's a little bit deeper to me, but
Hmm.
when you go to a baseball game in person,
Yeah.
what you don't see is the stuff between the innings, right? The little fun
Yeah.
games that they do on the side.
Hmm.
Um, and when they're switching, and the there'll be a third baseman, he'll come out and throw some of the baseballs out into the crowd. Like that stuff is not shown. You don't see that on TV. That's
Yeah.
fun,
Yeah.
right?
Or the
And just
sausage races in
yeah, this
Milwaukee and the
exactly.
president
And
races in DC.
right,
Yeah.
right. Is and
There's.
so those are fun things, right? And so
Hmm.
I think that's part of what keeps baseball. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's what keeps it in, where the money is still being generated, because
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
it's a fun time out for the family. And it's not, the tickets aren't even, I mean, like when I went to go see the Rangers
Yeah.
play the Cardinals a few years ago,
They're
I
not
think I
bad at
paid
all.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I paid like $55 a ticket, for one ticket. And I had like a couple beers and
Hmm.
some popcorn and a hot dog when I went to that game. I think overall I spent like $75, but it was
Yeah.
like just well worth it. You're paying for the
Yeah.
experience. I had a good time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And maybe baseball's like the grown up in the room, and they're
yeah,
saying, you know what, all of that, all of that media attention and going to different places, that's beneath us. We don't need that attention. We
right.
we are the professional league that behaves like grown-ups. People talk about, all the fans are just, they don't get into all the fights like you see in the NFL and all the
Mhm.
other stuff. They're like, we're the grown-ups in the room, and we don't need to do all that. We'll let you
Right.
know when he signs with the team, and that's that.
That's that. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, like even like we talk about football and baseball, and like even with like basketball,
hmm,
their basketball works on a handful of players being the face of the
yeah,
league, right?
yeah,
Um,
right,
I mean, obviously you have LeBron, you have
hmm,
Kevin Durant,
yeah,
and you know, then we have these players that are supposed to be the next set of players
sure,
to kind of be the face, right? We've had Curry, he's a face in the league, and then you're excited to see like Maxi and Halliburton, and which I didn't even
hmm,
I
yeah.
wouldn't I hadn't even really seen him play until recently in Indiana,
Who's
and I'm
seen the
like,
Pacers play? Yeah, nobody
yeah.
saw them, and that was the cool thing about the in-season tournament
Right,
was
that turned out to be
you
something
had
deep.
it did. It turned out to be, and Adam Silver's pretty good at uh, just bringing attention. And I think that in-season tournament was a really good idea in hindsight, even though I didn't even really understand what the heck was going on.
Yeah, I didn't, and I really still don't really get it, but I do see where they're trying to go. It's more
Yeah.
about keeping the players from resting, them being hungry. Although I feel like LeBron wanted this. I think it was it might have been Boumani Jones. I'm pretty sure it was Boumani, but it was the idea that LeBron wanted this so much, so bad, so that he can say that he has it, and it's a one up on Michael Jordan.
Oh,
You know?
he was pretty excited to receive that in-season trophy.
Trophy,
And
yeah.
I heard they're even gonna raise an in-season tournament winner banner. It's a
Okay.
so there's a lot of stuff, but that in-season tournament worked well because you had good performances by the
Yes.
the big name players like LeBron,
Mhm.
like Anthony Davis, who played his butt off in that finals game. You
Right.
had Kevin Durant showed up,
Yeah.
Giannis showed up, and then you also had the guys that you had been hearing about but hadn't really seen because when is an Indiana Pacers game ever on TV? It never is.
Right.
So you got a chance to see Halliburton and how great he is and how good that Indiana team is.
Right.
So yeah, it was pretty cool. I got to give my props for that. I think they did a good job with that tournament, mainly because that the right people performed. So you had the stars that everybody, like you said, come to see, but then you also had a chance to showcase some of the players that you don't talk about as much. So yeah,
Yeah.
it turned out to be a pretty cool thing.
It exposed some players too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I I saw I saw a lot about the Zion Williamson, and
Of
after
course
this
you did, man.
tournament, I know it. I hate here's my thing. When Shaq is telling you and when Charles Barkley is telling you, hey man, you got to work on this weight thing. When those two
Yeah.
are telling you,
Yeah. Right.
that's kind of like a wake up call. And the thing
Yeah.
is, he did come in shape the beginning of the season, and like that,
Yeah.
with the snap of a finger, he was right back out of shape. And
Yeah.
I know recently he just had a big game like a couple nights ago, right? But
Yeah.
those big games with the talent that he has, those big games are so few and far between. Like it's like you were supposed to be the next star. You're the number one pick. You were supposed to be the
Yeah.
next star. And watching
Yeah.
him play against the Lakers, I saw a struggling young, what is he,
Yeah.
21, 22? And
He's
he was
he's in his early 20s.
struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was tired and he was wore out. And it's that weight has a lot to do with that. You're not in shape.
Yeah.
You're not in
Yeah.
NBA shape. And if you're only
No.
giving us one of those good nights every month, every 10 games,
Yeah.
that's not good
Yeah.
enough when you are the
No.
number one pick.
When you're the face of that franchise, man.
Right. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
right now, there's a couple players on your team that look better than you, right? And you're
Yeah.
supposed to be
Yeah.
the face of the team. That's
Mm-hmm.
unacceptable, and that's something I'm sure the New Orleans Pelicans address in the offseason. It it sucks, but it might be time to tell them like, hey man, you can either stay in shape or you got to pack your bags. And I don't think a lot of teams want to deal with that. Now,
No.
obviously, he's young enough where teams will be like, I can make this work. You might have one team that may say, I can make this work, but he's so inconsistent. If I'm an owner
Yeah.
or a GM, I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that headache. I don't know
Yeah.
if he will do what we need him to do. Like,
Yeah.
uh, you know, teams don't want to go down that path. It's so much other talent out here. It's a lot of
Oh yeah.
talent out there, right?
Yeah.
In the NBA right now. And
Yeah.
we don't always see it because they play for, uh, Minnesota Timberwolves, or they play for Indiana Pacers, or they,
Mhm.
wherever they may play. Even when you look at like Mitchell in Cleveland, we don't get to
Yeah.
see a
Yeah.
lot of the things he does because he plays in Cleveland, or
Mhm.
De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
So those players, right? We just don't see those teams a lot, but we know there's so much talent on these teams. And when you have a Zion Williamson who has all this talent, but it's not he's not giving his full potential.
No.
It hurts. It hurts him,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
I think he's making it hard for himself in the future, man, because teams are gonna not want to. They're just not. They're like, hey, we can find talent elsewhere that's giving it 100%. Because
Right.
you see, Maxi is flourishing
Yeah. Mhm.
in Philly. So there's young talent out here, and like
Mhm.
Zion Williams has to know, just because you was the number one pick doesn't guarantee that you're set in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Um,
yeah, it's go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and another thing that is an issue. You hate to see the off court things be an issue, but I don't know how much you paid attention to the off season when he was dealing with stuff with the two women, and he was cheating on the girlfriend, and one
Yeah.
of them was pregnant, and all of that. Those are things like organizations, they don't want to deal with that. They don't know
No,
nothing
look
about
what
that. They
happened to
don't want.
John Moran. John Moran hasn't even played a basketball game this year,
Right.
you know,
From
because of
all
off the court stuff.
stuff,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And
and Williamson had the problems when he was injured last year, where he just vanished. You know,
yeah,
he, he wasn't even like in New Orleans. He wasn't being treated by the trainers. I mean, he is. He's if he wants to stay in New Orleans, he's not doing it the right way. You know,
no,
um, and he's not like you said. He's not consistently great enough to do all of this stuff and still remain on the team and still be re-signed when it comes time. And if New Orleans, who has had you for however many years, doesn't want to resign you, how many other teams that are interested in a center or whatever, or a power forward, are going to even want to look at you
right.
if they already see? I mean, they already see your body of work,
Hmm.
and you're not going to get signed by a team just because you did really good for 1 year in college.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
he's still, it's almost like he's still living off of the 1 year he did
Yeah.
in North Carolina, the Duke. I mean,
Right.
the 1 year he did at Duke, like he's still kind of trying to like live off of that. And
Yeah.
and man, that's not realistic. That's not gonna work, man, because
No.
the great players instantly, when Kevin Durant came to the league, we
Yeah.
we weren't talking about the 1 year at Texas too much anymore. Like,
No,
because
absolutely
we,
not.
we saw what he was doing in the NBA. Like, I would, and this would be the best way for me to compare it, right? So there's somebody out there that could tell you Zion Williams, that could talk about what Zion Williamson did at Duke, and all these things that he did at Duke, and
Mhm.
And you could bring that up as a conversation piece because it's not enough. Like there's not enough. He hasn't done enough in the league to not talk about that, right? But after the same amount of time for Kevin Durant, after the same amount of time in the league, you didn't have to go back to what Kevin Durant did at UT, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about what he has been able to do for the last 3 years. And that's the difference, right? And like even LeBron, like fresh out of high school, after 3 years, you're already talking about LeBron's numbers, right?
Yeah.
In the league. You're not talking about high school stuff when he was coming, when he high school.
No,
The great players.
Yeah.
After 3 years, we're talking about what they've been able to do in the league. We're no longer talking about what they've done in college. And here it is, 3 years later, we're still talking about what Zion Williamson did in college. We shouldn't be talking about that anymore.
I think if you are one of the top 3 players drafted in any year, in 3 years, you should be one of the best players in the league,
Right.
You have those couple of years to figure it out, to get your body of work together, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time the 3rd year is done, you should be in the discussion as one of the best, or you should be one of the guys where they said, yeah, well,
yeah,
you're either, was it the Gallinari or whatever his name is, the guy who got picked by the Pistons, or you're going to be talked about like, LeBron, or you're going to be Kevin Durant, or you're going to be Greg Oden. He's getting closer to being a Greg Oden, or something like the player that the teams regret taking. That's on those lists on social media of the biggest busts, in the NBA draft or whatever, So do you want to be a Brad Daugherty, or do you want to be Michael Jordan? It's up to you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And right now, from what I could see, he is not making a strong case. Like I said, that one good game out of 10, is just it's not good enough for a number 1 pick.
And there's
Go ahead.
And there's 100 players like Maxey and Halliburton and all these other guys. There's 100 more Halliburtons and Maxies out there that are waiting for you to flip up and take your spot.
Yeah.
So you can't ride that number 1 overall draft pick for past your rookie or your rookie contract.
Yeah, you can. I mean, like, look at Giannis, right? So Giannis was very narrow, but worked hard. He got himself physically right? And I know it's opposite because Zion Williamson is on the heavier side, right? But but Giannis was like, okay, how do I get stronger? And you know what? You know why I respect him? Because it was one of the Lopez brothers was talking about like his work ethic, and when the game is over, he continues to go in there and work out and shoot because he's like, okay, well, this is where my issue is. I'm gonna work on it, right? And I'm gonna address it. And I think Zion has the personality. Well, I'm talented already, right? I'm a gifted player. And some of these players just feel like they don't have anything to work on, right? And it's just every player has something to work on. LeBron did not come out of high school and not work on something. Kobe didn't come out of high school and not work on something. Kevin Garnett did not come out of high school and not work on something. And a lot of the 1 year players that you think that KD didn't go work on something, he went and worked on something, right?
Well, and all those players that you just mentioned are known more for their work ethic than there are for their talent. and they
Yeah.
are as talented already as Zion Williamson, but
Right.
that's not their greatest, attributor, their greatest asset. Their greatest asset is their work ethic. Those 2 hours or those 400 shots, that they take. Well, who was
Right.
it? There was a guy I was listening to the other day. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. JJ Riddick.
Okay.
He was talking about the routine that he goes through every day during the off season, before season starts, and his daily routine is insane, intense, you know, and he decided to retire because he was done doing that. And
Right.
you know, there are that's that's the mindset of all the great athletes that are in the
Yeah.
NBA and they're in baseball, and the players that actually attain that greatness. They've got that Kobe mentality. They've got that
Hmm.
LeBron work ethic. They've got those great just work skills, where they're so focused on
Yeah.
the work that you got to put into it to be great. And even got guys like Riddick, who was a great player,
Hmm.
but he had to work as hard as he did, and he wasn't even like one of the top 100 players in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
so if you're not going to do the work, there's guys who are
mhm.
going to take your place, man,
Yeah.
and then you'll just be another flash in the pan or another punchline on social media, and everybody
Hmm.
will talk about, what could have been. And
Right.
you can go to your Duke reunions, or he didn't even graduate from Duke. So you can go to
Yeah.
you know, your reunions or whatever in 30 years and just
Years.
live in regret.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, it takes. I mean, not everybody is gifted. Like my,
Yeah.
my son is heavy set. He'll be 16 Friday. He's heavy set. He has really big feet. It's hard to find him cleats because he wears a size 14. And I don't know
Oh.
if anybody knows how hard it is to find a size 14 soccer cleat. And soccer is super strict. It's like it has to be a soccer cleat, and they're almost impossible to size 14 wide foot cleat, right?
Right.
And and my son is passionate about soccer, right? And
Cool.
he tries his best, and he's a sophomore this year, and he did not make the team, but he asked his coach, "Can I still come to practice? Right? Can I still come?
Nice.
Can I still stay after school and practice with the team, even though I'm not on the
That's
team?"
awesome.
And he
That's
asked me,
awesome.
Can I still practice?" And I said, "Yeah, you can still practice." And he still stays till 6 o'clock to practice every day. And
Nice.
he's not even on the team. He doesn't go to the games, nothing. But he
That's
still
awesome.
goes and practices with the team because he's like
Hmm.
just that serious. And he told me, he said, "Well, next year I will try again." You know,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
but those are the things, like, even though he gets on my nerves and he frustrates me with some of his schoolwork sometimes, and I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing in class? Like, how are you missing this assignment? Like, come on,
But
man."
because he's a
But
sophomore, because he's 14
yeah,
years old, 15 years old. Yeah, or
right.
16, like you said on this
Yeah.
week.
And
Yeah.
and but those are the kind of like mindsets when you get to that level. Like, he
Hmm.
understands that, I'm not. I'm pro. He told me, "Hey, I'm not as fast, and my kicks aren't that great." But he wants to just be there to get better, to learn, right?
Yeah.
And he'll tell me like, "Oh, there's one guy on the team, and he was kind of teaching me how to be able to dribble better, to work on my dribbling, right?" And
Nice.
I can't even be mad at him about.
Nope.
I'm not mad at all, because I'm like, okay, well, hey, give it your best shot. Kudos to you, because soccer is just exhausting, like super exhausting, right?
You have to
Um,
be in shape to be in
you
soccer, man.
have
Holy
right,
cow!
you have to be in shape for
You
soccer. And he told me, he said, next year I'm gonna do cross country. And I was like,
wow.
huh? And he goes, well, I know I'm not gonna win anything, but it'll help me be able to breathe better while I'm running. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, like,
Nice.
so those are things that I do appreciate, right? As a parent. And, you
Yeah.
know, but for him to be that age and understand that while I haven't made it, I'm gonna keep working hard to try, even if I don't make it. I gave every possible effort I could make to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and those are some of the things that I see, like with some of these players. It's like, okay, you play a good game, you're living off your college days, basically. You're
Mhm.
and you're like, I get my check and I go, like, and then I go to the club, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that are very frustrating, because I'm like, dude, like, the first sport, because I didn't play baseball. I loved watching it, but the first
Yeah.
sport that I loved playing was basketball. I
Right.
just didn't get the shape of a basketball player. I stopped growing at 5'11", and I grew out and
Mhm.
not up, right? So I just didn't get the shape of a basketball player. 20 years ago, if you asked me, I would have told you, oh yeah, I have great footwork in terms of my footwork in terms of a basketball player is great. Like, if I would have been 6'4", 6'5", there's no doubt in my mind, not a single doubt in my mind, I would have I would have made some kind of league playing basketball. But
Cool.
because I would have the work ethic, right? I just didn't get, you know, uh and 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 the thing is, like, sometimes it's frustrating, right? Because you see some of these players and you're like, oh, you're not even giving it your all, right? You're
Yeah.
there because you're 6'6", you can dunk the ball, and you run fast, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, granted, I know that you, like, worked hard to get here, but there's there's a handful of players that are in the league strictly because their physique, and I don't think it's
Mhm.
so much of their work ethic. And
Oh yeah.
and those are things that are frustrating. I'm not saying I'm not hating on these guys, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that,
No,
but it
sure.
is, as somebody that's a fan of the game, I want to see people that are putting in work. Like, I want to, you see the ones that aren't. Clearly Zion Williamson is not putting in the work that we know that he
Yeah.
could put in.
Yeah. Well, and I'm afraid that now he's going to do one of two things. Or one of three things. He's just going to blow him off and just keep doing what he's doing, or he's going to use that as a look teaching point, and he's going to improve his physical conditioning and his health, and he's going to become the great player that we know he can be, or he's going to use it as a reason to be the victim, you know?
Yeah.
And it already sounded like the other day in the press conference, because they were asking him, what do you think about the criticism that you got from Stephen A. Smith and stuff like that? And he said, well, to the people that are criticizing because they care about me, thank you. To the others, I don't know what to tell you, And it already sounds like, oh man, now you're the victim,
Yeah.
you know? Just stop, man. Just stop.
Yeah. 'Cause
Just become the adult that you are,
mhm.
accept responsibility, and then be the professional, the guy that's
Yeah.
making multi-million dollars every year to
Right.
play a kid's game. And you know yeah, just become a professional.
Just
And that's
become a
the biggest
yeah.
problem.
Right.
Yeah,
No.
because
Yeah.
his eating habits in New Orleans are like becoming
Yeah.
legendary already. He's only been
And
there a couple of years.
I know the food is good there. The food is really good there, man. But come on, man. Like it's got to be because if 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 you take if you take into account that he has every resource available to be able to
Mm-hmm.
maintain a healthy diet, like
Mm-hmm.
and he has the biggest in terms like you can the gym is basically free. You have a gym at your facility, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
trainers at all you have to do is
At your
snap and you have
disposal.
trainers,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all of this, all these things that you have that are available to you to be successful, right? You think
Right.
the Pelicans are gonna sign you and draft you number one for you for nobody to be on deck to help you with these things?
Yeah.
No, like you have availability to all of this, and you're simply not just taking it serious. There's no way
You're
you're taking it
wasting it.
serious.
Yeah. You're
There's
wasting it.
no
Yeah.
way. So, yeah, I mean, what do you do? What do you tell him? Like, you know, like he said, like you said, he's gonna probably go the victim route, and
Mm.
it sucks because I would, and I hope I'm wrong in 2 years. Hopefully, in 2 years he figures it out. I hope
Yeah.
so. Like,
Oh, me too.
I don't. Yeah, I hope I'm wrong, but right now it remains to be seen that I will be wrong because we keep seeing the same pattern. Start the year healthy, by mid-year unhealthy
Yeah.
and can't play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that weight's going to take a toll. So it's kind of up to
Mm-hmm.
him. Real quick, this weekend we got some big games. Everybody is
Yeah.
kind of everybody's kind of like just even Steve. I don't even know who the dominant team is right now. It switches from
This
week to
game's so
week.
hard. This
Yeah,
season is so messed up.
it
So
is.
messed up. I mean, we didn't talk last week. So the week before, all we talked about was no matter what happens, Jalen Hurts figures out a way to win. And
Right.
then he gets destroyed 2 weeks in a row. And then you're like,
Yes.
okay, the Steelers are doing all right. And then the Steelers get destroyed by the Patriots. And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, and then freaking Joe Flacco comes out of nowhere, and
I
you're like, what
know
the hell is going on
going
here?
on.
And
Yeah.
then the Jets destroy the freaking Texans.
I
And
know, like
it is
destroy,
I
like it
am
wasn't even
not
close.
I am not picking any more games because this season has been so crazy.
I'm
I will enjoy the games and I will reflect on the games, but I am not even gonna pick the next games because it is so
I can't
crazy.
because we were ready to
I can't.
count the Bengals out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We were
ready to
so
count
like,
them out.
oh, well, and the Bengals, like, 1 week we were like, they're the best team in the AFC. And then,
Yeah,
like, they're out, because
yeah,
Joe Burrow got hurt and stuff. And then they destroy the Colts this week. And they're one
yeah,
of those 6 teams that are 7-6. And there's 3 teams that are like 8-5.
yeah,
And yeah, it's insane. And then the Cowboys were like, they can't beat anybody. And then they destroy the
yeah,
Eagles. I mean, if they, yeah, it's been great. And then the Dolphins self implode, and
yeah,
but we were expecting that because the
yeah. We
Dolphins haven't
questioned.
really beaten anybody that's got a winning
Yeah,
record this year, anyways.
right.
So yeah, it's been fun
It has.
because
Then the
nobody,
Giants go on to beat Green Bay. Like,
yeah,
where did that come from?
this Italian stallion comes out of
Yeah,
nowhere,
yeah, yeah.
homegrown, still lives with his mom, and he's the most talked about player in the NFL right now. I mean,
Right now, yeah.
this
It's
is one of those seasons that you're never gonna forget. The
yeah.
Lions get destroyed by the Bears. I
I
mean,
know, yeah. All of a
Jared
sudden the
Goff was
Bears
doing
are
so great, and all of a sudden he's throwing like 4 picks a game.
a
And
game,
Justin
yeah.
Fields looks like the MVP of the league right now because he's been winning games. I mean, the Bears
Yeah.
are 5-8 right now, and who would have picked that?
I
You remember
know.
when they were remember when they played the Panthers and almost lost?
Lost,
And
yeah,
everybody was talking about it doesn't matter anyways because the Bears are getting the Panthers pick anyways.
yeah,
So they
yeah,
can beat them. And all of a sudden, they're like just a couple games behind the Lions now, And
yeah.
it's been fun. It's been a
It has
lot of
been
fun.
fun. We still
Yeah.
the Rams still have a chance realistically. Man,
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw any highlights from that game, man, but that was a
I
that was a
did. Oh my goodness.
exciting game. Exciting game.
And
It came down to a
Lamar
punt
was
return in
slinging
overtime.
that ball, man.
Yeah,
Lamar looked like he was back I remember when he was throwing the ball and when he won the Heisman in college, he was throwing it that way. I mean,
yeah.
whew,
And
he
Odell
might
Beckham
be.
Jr. still runs a really crisp route. He still is solid, man. I don't care if
Yeah.
that guy's got cartilage in his knee or not. You know, he's he's still like some
Oh,
of those plays that he got open last weekend. I was like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
anybody would have been on that. Anybody would have went in on that. Like
Yeah.
that was just a really good route ran. So
Yeah.
like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was just. But even like I don't know how much you've watched Kyron Williams, the running back for the Rams, but that
Huh?
dude is
Yeah.
that's who we needed, man, at running back because that
Cool.
guy runs with purpose. He's every
Yeah.
game that he's played, he's had over 100 yards. I mean, he's missed 4 games and is still going to surpass barring any injury, he's still gonna surpass 1,100 yards, and he missed
Wow.
4 games this season. Puka
Wow.
Nakua, whew, I mean, you gotta have him on the list for Rookie of the Year,
Yeah.
because his numbers are. I mean, he's on his way to breaking some records as a rookie.
Cool.
Yeah, man, and I don't know how much you've watched, how much you've seen of Puka Nakua, man, but his story is interesting, man. Look, check him out, man. You know,
Sure.
he's Puka Nakua, his heart, his work ethic, man, what he brings to the table. We're gonna talk about him the same way Cooper Kupp is talked about. I know this year Cooper Kupp's numbers have been down,
Yeah.
and that's due to some we are running the ball more this year.
Yeah.
There's a different level of balance. I do like over the last 3-4 games, what McVay has been doing with the Rams.
Sure.
I mean, I honestly, I know we're a team full of rookies, but when you have, Puka Nakua is a rookie, we have 2 defensive linemen that are tied for all rookie sacks that have two rookie defensive linemen that have 5 sacks that ties
Yeah.
the league for rookies. So this is while this was supposed to be the rebuild year, there
Yeah.
is
Cool.
it's we've turned into an exciting team to watch, and I'm excited. And I hopefully we could sneak into the playoffs, and if we do, we're gonna give some teams some fits. So I'm excited.
Cool.
If things stay the way
Yeah.
they are, I'm excited. So
Cool. Yeah. And with Cooper Kupp, I mean, his numbers coming down. The numbers he put up, the only way he could go is down because his numbers were crazy. I
yeah,
mean,
they were so crazy. Yeah, it's yeah,
I saw this.
exactly.
I saw this one thing on TikTok where they were talking about the most receiving yardage by receivers in the top 10 list, and they
Right.
were talking about Calvin Johnson and Jerry Rice and Randy Moss and Cooper Kupp's, you know, stats a couple years ago. He had like the second or third highest receiving yards by a receiver in NFL history. And I was
Right.
like, wow. I mean, never even real. I mean, I knew he had a year, but I
Right.
didn't know it was historical. I mean, it was
Right.
insane how
Yeah.
just under the radar he went, with that stuff. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited for you, man. I mean, I'm excited for it seems like almost every team's got a shot this year. I mean, you've
Yeah.
got a couple teams that are like the 49ers, are, looking like the best team in the NFC, and the Ravens are looking like the best team. but then the Ravens almost lost to the Rams, you know? So, I
Right.
mean, this is a good year, man. This is
It
so exciting.
is.
And the games are exciting. I mean, if you look past that offsides, you know, with the Chiefs and the Bills, that was
That
a
was an
hell of a
exciting
game,
game.
dude.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
good game, you
Yeah.
know. And the Ravens, I just saw the highlights with the Ravens and the Rams, and they were cutting to it. It seemed like every 5 seconds something crazy happened. Whether
Right.
it was I said St. Louis, whether it was Los Angeles scoring or
Snap.
it was Baltimore scoring, you know, yeah, there was
Yeah.
something happening every time. And then
Yeah.
I watched the first half. They had the Browns Jaguars game on, and I had to watch that because the only other game was the Panthers, and they were getting destroyed by the Saints.
Yeah. It wasn't.
Um,
Yeah.
but that game was good. Flacco was
Right.
slinging it, man, and
Yeah.
Flacco has already developed He's got a Amani tumor out there. He's got Njada or whatever his name is for Cleveland, and those
Right.
guys already are on the same page. And there was and even watching a little bit of the Saints and Panthers game, that was interesting too. Even though the Saints beat them, I mean that was close until the end when the
Right.
Saints went up at the very end. And I thought Carr was going to get beat up by his offensive line and stuff in that
Yeah.
game. Yeah, I mean he wasn't reading the defense, and there were so many times where he was getting sacked because he just wasn't picking up on the stuff the defense was doing, and his offensive line was like, "You should have seen that, you know?
Right.
Why aren't you calling the audible and stuff like that?"
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, these games are fun. The
They are
Falcons Buccaneers game was super fun. So yeah,
fun.
it's
That
been
was a fun
exciting,
game.
man. It's
Yeah.
been exciting. So
So
I'm all for it.
yeah,
I'm having a
I
blast.
this season has been so fun because there's like you
Yeah.
just don't know, like you just don't know, like it's hard to bet against any team because you
Yeah.
you could have never, I would have never, although we needed New York to beat Green Bay to keep the Rams,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
percentages to give us a chance. But and not, I mean, I wouldn't have bet against Green Bay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. No way New York's gonna beat Green Bay. Not with the
Yeah.
way Green Bay has been playing. And
Right.
boom, look.
Boom.
You
Yeah.
know. So
And
yeah.
look what the Titans did to Miami. They came back
I
and
know.
beat them at the end of the game.
And you know what? The thing is, every team, because we kind of, that whole division, the Titans, Indianapolis, Houston, and Jags, like 3-4 weeks ago, we were like, that division's crap. And all of those teams realistically can make the playoffs. Like,
and they're all doing it with like backup quarterbacks or third string quarterbacks.
Indianapolis is using Minshew and
yeah,
the Titans.
You got Levi's for Tennessee. You've got freaking Joe Flacco, who's like the third option in Cleveland. And then they put him back on the practice roster.
Practice squad, yeah, they
Jacksonville.
did. yeah.
And they got the kid in Cincinnati who's slinging it, fucking
Browning.
Yeah. I mean, God, there is so much crazy stuff. And then out of all of that, why is Jameis Winston not playing for the Saints instead of Derek Carr?
I know it. It's wild. It's wild.
But yeah.
This is exciting. I'm excited about this,
man.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. About the playoffs this year. I mean, I don't. We realistically, we don't even know who's going to make it. Everything is just switching around from week to week. Everything changes. I mean, the Cowboys now have the same record as Philly, and we don't know who's who. We don't know what we're gonna see. Who's showing up week to week, and I like it. I love it.
Oh yeah, and this week you start off with the Chargers and the Raiders. That's always an entertaining game. The Broncos play the Lions. Going to see what happens there. the Bengals and the Vikings, who we were all high on them a couple of weeks ago. With the with the Dobbs, coming in,
and he's not even playing
didn't
anymore.
Know where to find the locker room, but and like you said, he's not even playing. And the Steelers, who we thought had figured it out after they fired Canada, and now they're losing to the Patriots, who this might be their worst year in 25 years. Yeah, there's some good games this weekend too. So you even got the Eagles and the Seahawks are playing Monday night, so that I don't care much about that game. But the Bills and the Cowboys, Josh Allen's playing his tail off. He's playing his butt off, and that defense, and that's going to be in Buffalo. Yeah. So that's an afternoon game in Buffalo. So there might be a foot of snow on the ground there. So that'll be a good test for Dak.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That'll
absolutely.
Be a big test for Dak.
That'll be important. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's playing his butt off too this year, man.
Yeah, he is.
And with all this happening, nobody's even talking about the fact that Tyreek Hill might, surpass 2,000 yards this year if he stays healthy.
No, like he's not even talked about for MVP, at all.
Exactly.
At all.
It just proves that the NFL the MVP is a quarterback award.
It's definitely a quarterback.
Unless you're a running back that runs for 2,000 yards, it's a quarterback award.
Right. And aside from that's like you said. The thing is, Tyreek Hill is putting up some crazy astronomical numbers, and it's not even. It's like, okay, nobody's talking about it.
Nobody.
It's just all right. Well, he's Tyreek Hill. He's fast. And
right.
And nobody's mentioning anything about it. And when we look at, because who else aside from that looks like an MVP right now?
It's you got Dak because he's having a good stretch right now, and it's kind of how you finish.
Right.
There's no running back. They used to talk about Hurts, but he looks like he's injured or something. I don't know what's going on with him. He doesn't even look like he's having fun on the sidelines. Yeah.
Right. Philly looks vulnerable right now.
Oh, big time. Philly is playing because they got destroyed by San Francisco. Since we last talked, they got destroyed by San Francisco and Dallas. The week before that, they almost lost to Buffalo. They should have lost to Buffalo, right? Yeah. The week before that, they should have lost to Kansas City.
Right.
So they're 10-3, but they could have easily been 6-7 right now.
Right. Yeah.
And so Hurts isn't an MVP candidate anymore. I think Patrick Mahomes is just because he's Patrick Mahomes. Okay, but we said at the beginning, they're not even a good team right now.
So what about Christian McCaffrey?
Sure.
Christian McCaffrey is in the argument. So
so's Brock. Yeah.
So is Brock Purdy. So if I had to pick four people for MVP, just to talk about for MVP right now, it'd be Brock Purdy, it'd be Christian McCaffrey, it'd be Dak Prescott, and it'd be Tyreek Hill. Those would be the four. I would
take McCaffrey out of that and put Lamar into the conversation.
Okay, that's fair. I have to go back and relook at some numbers, and the reason is because Baltimore does have the number one defense in the league.
Okay, sure, that's fair.
That's my only thing. I have seen some people talk about Josh Allen by the end, if he continues the way he's been over the last couple weeks, that he's
carrying that offense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's got as good a defense as Baltimore does, man.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
What about Russell? What about Russell Danger Wilson?
not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
I need to see. I need to see 2 more weeks. I need to see two
Yeah.
more weeks. If I see 2 more weeks, because Denver's defense has really improved.
They stepped up.
Dem,
Yeah. They
Denver's
they
defense is
they've been putting their offense in really good situations.
right.
And they've been keeping them in games in the beginning, which they didn't do the first couple of weeks, or for basically against the Dolphins. Now that I
Right.
think about it, that defense kept them in the game every game this year. And at the beginning of the season, they weren't figuring out how to win, and
Right.
now they know how to win. You know, they
Yeah.
figured it out. They figured out how to finish, which is what
Mhm.
they weren't doing at the beginning of the season, what they weren't doing at all last year, because their defense was keeping it close pretty much every game last year and this year. So yeah, you're right. I was just messing around with Wilson. He's not an
I
MVP
know.
this year,
You I mean, you
yeah,
gotta try to represent for your team. Um,
yeah,
I'm gonna
because you gotta be
I'm
ready.
gonna advocate. I'm gonna advocate. I know it's not gonna happen, but I'm gonna advocate for Puka Nacua being rookie of the year. I'm just
That's fair.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
advocating for that.
yeah, yeah. And it's more likely now with C.J. Stroud, his season being kind of in doubt.
In doubt,
You know,
yeah,
I think he's already had a body of work this year, and just what he's done, turned around that team. It's his award to lose.
yeah. We'll see what happens, but I
Sure.
feel like I feel like if they look at what I'm looking at, that
Yeah.
the Rams are not what they're doing offensive. They're not doing what they're doing offensively. Obviously, I know Kyron Williams has been a huge part in that, but Puka
Yeah.
Nacua has been a huge part in us winning this year as well. So,
Cool.
and we don't have like this is what the Rams have been able to do with
Hmm.
given that we have these rookies and everybody said this is a rebuild year and we weren't,
Yeah.
we weren't. I mean, because we're what 6-7, and we still have a really good chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if we're able to make the playoffs, this is not a one man show. This was a team. Like this was a team
Yeah.
effort.
That's
This was a
cool.
hard fought team effort. And I love it. I'm happy to see it. It's been
Cool.
fun. Even with the ups and downs, as many times as I cursed at Matthew Stafford and said, "What the fuck are you doing, man? Like, why the would you throw that?" Like as
Hmm.
many times as I've done that, and as many times
Yeah.
as I've been sitting at home and like, why are y'all playing that defense? It's been fun this season. I've enjoyed
Cool.
the grind. But yeah, man, I'm excited to watch some football this weekend. Real quick, I would like to know before we get off, I would like to know, do you have any college football playoff predictions? I already know that you have Washington getting beat. I already know that.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't as much as I don't think of Washington, I think even less of Texas. So I think
Okay.
Washington will beat Texas. I've seen them play more than I've seen Texas play because I watched the Pac-12 because I'm a Buffaloes fan.
Yeah.
So I think Washington will beat Texas, but I don't think anybody's going to beat Alabama because they didn't. I don't think Michigan's going to win that. I don't think that
No.
at all. Just because of the way we've seen this in the past, and maybe
Right.
I might be proven wrong. I watched Alabama against Georgia, and they looked so good.
Mhm.
And I was disappointed that Alabama got picked. I know they were the SEC champion, but they beat Georgia one time,
Yeah.
and I think Georgia got hosed. I think they were still the best team in college football. And the fact that they didn't make it to so I kind of think that you're kind of just watching
just to watch.
I will watch, but I think that Alabama's going to beat Michigan. I think that Washington is going to beat Texas, and then I think Alabama's going to crush Washington. I mean,
okay. Yeah.
It's almost like they got Alabama into the playoffs, and then they just gave them the worst teams imaginable to play so they could give Nick Saban another ring.
And so basically, based on what people that are defending the committee are saying, that they wanted to avoid last year when Georgia beat the shit out of TCU, and it looks like you could have the same thing with Alabama beating the shit out of Washington.
Out of Washington, yeah.
So
because TCU made Ohio State look stupid last year.
Yeah,
and TCU had no business being in their college football. No. They didn't belong there. If you honestly want to tell me that the reason Florida State's not there is because you wanted the 4 best teams, then you shouldn't have Texas and you shouldn't have Washington there. Maybe Ohio State should be there. I don't know. Definitely Florida State should have been in it, and definitely Georgia should have been in it.
Right.
I would have no problem if they would have said, Washington, you're out of here.
If I would have said, if they feel that way, then Georgia and Alabama both have to be in it. Then, that's how I see it. Georgia and if based on Georgia and Alabama have to still vote, because both of those teams, if you feel that way, both of those teams still have to be in there, because that Georgia Alabama game could have went either way. One, those teams are both really, really good at this point, if that's what we're going on. So.
Yeah, and you can't say that Florida State played in a weaker conference and that's why they're not in. But then you turn around and you look at the Big 12 and the Pac-12, and you're going to tell me that the Pac-12 and Big 12 is somehow that much better than the ACC?
Right.
Come on.
Right. Exactly.
The only reason Texas is in it is because they beat Alabama earlier in the year, which gives you pause for concern if you're an Alabama fan.
Right.
But Alabama's they've always been a team that just destroys at the either all year, or they have a couple hiccups at the beginning and then they get their act together and then they're the best team in college football at the end of the year.
Right.
And sometimes they overcome that early loss like they did this year, and sometimes they don't. And this year they overcome it and they're going to win another national championship because of it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It might turn out to be like the NFL, and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
That's why I'm not predicting football games in the
NFL.
Anymore.
I'm done this year. I'm done predicting this year. I don't know who's gonna win. I'm just gonna watch.
I watched ESPN's Sunday morning countdown, and they were picking the upsets, the underdog upsets, and they picked. And I got the list. I wrote it down because I thought it was so crazy. They picked Teddy Bruschi, Rex Ryan, Randy Moss. They all picked upsets. And 3 out of 4 got them right. That's how many upsets that there were in just on a week-by-week basis in the NFL. That's why it's almost like easy money to bet on the underdogs in the NFL right now and stuff. It is insane.
Big money. Yeah.
Big time. It is so much fun because you don't know what's going to happen from week to week. And I think that's the coolest thing about the NFL season this year.
Me too. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'll see you back next week.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. I enjoyed talking to you. Enjoy some football this weekend. Enjoy some basketball, some hockey if you get a chance. And
Right. I might catch my first hockey game this week. Who knows?
There you go. You work on it, right?
I'm gonna try. I almost watched one last night, but
then
the Lakers were on, so I
watched that. You watched that. Yeah. All right, man.
All right. Take care, brother.
You too.